The full moon hung over the town of Pinheiros, a quiet little place in the countryside, illuminating the narrow streets and old houses with its spectral glow. At the central cafe, 4 friends gathered for another night of conversation and laughter. Clara, with her curious eyes and restless mind, was the unofficial leader of the group. Beside her, Lucas adjusted his glasses, always ready to offer a rational explanation. Diego, the athlete of the group, absent-mindedly fiddled with a keychain, while Julia, the most sensitive, nervously toyed with her necklace. "Have you heard the rumors about the abandoned cemetery?" Clara asked, leaning over the table, her voice low and filled with excitement. Lucas rolled his eyes. "Don't tell me you believe in those ghost stories, Clara." "It's not just that," she insisted. "They say the graves are being disturbed, and people have been hearing things." Julia visibly shuddered. "What kind of things?" "Screams, whispers, shadows moving in the darkness," Clara replied, her eyes shining with a mix of fear and fascination. Diego laughed, but there was a hint of nervousness in his laughter. "It's probably just kids playing pranks." Clara shook her head. "No, it's different this time. My uncle, who works at the city hall, said they've even closed off access to the cemetery." A heavy silence fell over the table. The old cemetery in Pinheiros had always been a source of urban legends, but in recent months, the rumors had intensified. "What if we went there?" Clara suddenly suggested, her voice trembling slightly with the boldness of the idea. "Are you crazy?" Julia exclaimed, her face pale in the dim light of the cafe. Lucas adjusted his glasses again, trying to keep his composure. "Clara, that's illegal, and probably dangerous." "Come on, guys," Clara insisted. "It's our chance to prove that these are just rumors, or maybe to uncover the truth behind them." Diego, always up for an adventure, shrugged. "I'm in. It could be fun." Julia and Lucas exchanged worried glances, but Clara's excitement was contagious. Reluctantly, they agreed. As they left the cafe, the cold night wind enveloped them, carrying with it the distant echo of a howl. Likely a dog, but at that moment, it felt like something more sinister. "Tomorrow night, then," Clara said, her voice barely concealing her anxiety. "Let's meet at sunset." At the cemetery gate, the 4 friends parted ways, each carrying a mix of eagerness and apprehension. None of them could imagine that their curiosity would lead them to confront horrors beyond their comprehension, and that before dawn, their lives would change forever. The sun set on the horizon, painting the sky of Pinheiros with shades of orange and red, when the 4 friends met at the entrance of the old cemetery. The rusty iron gate creaked softly with the night breeze, as if whispering warnings to the young adventurers. Clara was the first to arrive, her backpack filled with flashlights and other investigation tools. Her eyes sparkled with a blend of excitement and dread. Lucas soon followed, nervously adjusting his glasses as he examined the ivy-covered wall surrounding the cemetery. "Are you sure we want to do this?" Julia asked, arriving breathless, her face pale in the twilight. Diego, the last to arrive, shrugged with a forced smile. "We're already here, right? Let's go." With a sharp creak, Clara pushed the gate open, revealing a winding path between ancient tombstones and weathered statues. The group hesitated for a moment before stepping inside, the tall grass brushing against their legs as they moved forward. The cemetery was a labyrinth of shadows and silence. Twisted trees stretched their branches like skeletal fingers against the darkening sky. The air was heavy, laden with the scent of damp earth and decaying vegetation. "Look at this," Clara whispered, pointing to a nearby gravestone. The stone was cracked, with strange marks carved into its surface. Lucas leaned in to examine it. "They look like symbols. I don't recognize any of them." A shiver ran through the group. Julia grabbed Diego's arm, her wide eyes filled with fear. "Did you guys hear that?" For a moment, they all stood still, listening. A distant whisper seemed to echo among the gravestones, almost inaudible but undeniably present. "It's probably just the wind," Diego tried to reassure them, but his voice betrayed his own uncertainty. As they ventured deeper into the cemetery, the darkness seemed to thicken around them, swallowing the light from their lanterns. The air grew colder, and a fine mist began to form around their feet. Clara suddenly stopped. "Look over there." She pointed to an ancient crypt in the center of the cemetery. "That must be the founder family's crypt. Should we check it out?" As they approached the imposing structure, the whisper they had heard earlier seemed to grow louder, now almost clear enough to discern words. The 4 friends exchanged nervous glances, suddenly questioning the wisdom of their nighttime adventure. The founder family crypt loomed before them, its dark stone facade imposing. Clara, always the leader, pushed open the heavy door which creaked in protest. Inside, the air was stagnant and filled with dust. The friends' lanterns illuminated a small room with ancient sarcophagi lined along the walls. "Check this out," Diego whispered, pointing to one of the sarcophagi. The lid was askew and there were scratch marks on the stone. Lucas moved closer, his face pale. "This is serious. Someone has been here recently." Julia covered her mouth with her hand. "What kind of person would do this?" Clara began to explore the crypt, her lantern lighting up dark corners. "Maybe we'll find some clue." In a corner, she found a torn piece of paper. She unfolded it, and her eyes widened. "You guys need to see this." The paper contained a strange drawing with symbols none of them recognized. Below the drawing, there was a scrawled message: "They will return." "What does that mean?" Diego asked, his face grim. Lucas shook his head. "I don't know, but I think we should get out of here now." Julia agreed, her anxious gaze darting around. "Yes, let's leave. This is giving me the creeps." Clara, however, seemed fascinated. "I think we should investigate further. There might be more clues." As they debated, a noise echoed from outside the crypt. It sounded like heavy, deliberate footsteps. The friends exchanged glances, their hearts racing. "What was that?" Julia whispered, her voice trembling. Clara stepped closer to the door, her flashlight aimed into the darkness. "Let's take a look." Cautiously, the friends exited the crypt, their eyes scanning the cemetery's shadows. The noise had stopped, but the feeling of being watched was palpable. "I think we're being watched," Lucas whispered, his face tight. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows, its eyes fixed on the friends. For a moment, no one moved, frozen in fear. Then, the figure vanished as quickly as it had appeared. The friends took a deep breath, their hearts still racing. "What was that?" Julia asked, her voice shaky. Clara shook her head. "I don't know, but I think we need to leave. Now." The friends agreed, their eyes sweeping the darkness of the cemetery. As they moved away from the crypt, the silence was broken by a distant sound, a whisper that seemed to say, "They will return." And then suddenly the friends' flashlights went out, plunging the cemetery into total darkness. The complete darkness enveloped them like a physical blow, leaving them breathless. The friends clung to each other, trying to orient themselves in the oppressive silence. The distant whisper, now clearer, seemed to come from all directions, echoing among the tombstones. "What is happening?" Julia asked, her voice trembling. Lucas tried to calm the others, but his own voice shook. "Let's stay calm. We need to find a way out of here." Clara, however, appeared mesmerized by the whisper. "I think it's a message. Something wants to tell us something." Diego grabbed her arm. "Clara, no, we need to leave. This isn't right." But Clara broke free, moving toward the sound. The others followed reluctantly as the whisper grew louder, more insistent. The words began to become clear. "They will return. They will return." Suddenly, the lanterns lit up again, illuminating shadowy figures that seemed to rise from the very ground. The friends froze, their hearts pounding in unison. The figures approached, their faces indistinct, but their eyes shining with a supernatural light. "What are these things?" Julia whispered, her body trembling. Lucas tried to protect her, but his legs felt heavy, immobile. "We need to get out of here now." Clara, however, seemed fascinated. "They don't look hostile. Maybe they're trying to tell us something." Diego pulled her back. "Clara, no, this isn't normal." The shadowy figures stopped in front of them, their eyes fixed on the friends. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. Then, in a synchronized motion, they pointed in one direction, beyond the tombstones. "I think they want us to follow them," Clara said, her voice filled with a strange conviction. The friends exchanged hesitant glances. What they were facing was beyond their understanding, but curiosity and fear propelled them to move forward. "Let's go," Diego finally said, leading the group in the direction indicated by the shadowy figures. As they walked, the whisper stopped, and the figures vanished as mysteriously as they had appeared. The silence that followed was almost palpable, as if the cemetery itself was holding its breath, waiting for the next move from the friends. Then, a new gravestone came into view, more imposing than the others. Its surface was covered in strange symbols that seemed to pulse with a faint light. "What is this?" Julia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Clara stepped closer, her eyes fixed on the symbols. "I think it's a message. For us." Lucas followed her, his expression dark. "What does it say?" Clara hesitated, as if trying to decipher a code. "I think it's a warning, or a door, to something we don't want to see." Diego pulled her back. "Clara, don't touch that, we don't know what it is." But Clara had already touched the gravestone. The moment she did, the world around them began to change. Shadows stretched and twisted, as if they were alive. The air grew colder and denser, and the friends could feel a malevolent presence approaching. "What have you done?" Diego asked, his voice filled with panic. Clara stepped back, her eyes wide with fear. "I don't know. I just touched the gravestone." Lucas moved closer to the stone, examining the symbols. "I think it's a ritual. An incomplete ritual." Julia clutched him, her voice trembling. "What does that mean?" Lucas shook his head. "I don't know, but I think we need to get out of here now." But it was too late. The ritual had been activated, and the friends could feel the malevolent presence closing in. The shadows merged into a dark figure that rose before them. "What is that?" Julia asked, her voice barely a whisper. Clara approached the figure, her eyes fixed on it. "I think it's the one responsible for the ritual, the one behind all of this." The figure began to speak, its voice like a cold wind. "You should not have come here. You should not have interfered." The friends exchanged glances, their hearts beating in unison. They knew they were in danger, but they didn't know how to escape. "What do you want?" Lucas asked, his voice steady. The figure approached, its presence growing stronger. "I want to complete the ritual, and you will be the sacrifices." The friends stepped back, horrified. They knew they had to escape, but they didn't know how. The figure surrounded them, its presence suffocating. "Let's go!" Diego shouted, pulling his friends toward the exit of the cemetery. But it was too late. The figure caught up to them, and the friends found themselves face to face with terror. The incomplete ritual had been activated, and now they were trapped in a fight for survival. The friends ran as fast as they could, their feet pounding against the ground of the cemetery. The malevolent figure pursued them, its presence growing ever stronger. "Come on!" Diego yelled, tugging his friends toward the cemetery's exit. Clara stumbled, falling to the ground. Lucas helped her up, and they kept running. Julia glanced back, seeing the figure drawing closer. "It's gaining on us." Lucas pulled her forward. "Don't look back. Just keep running." They finally reached the cemetery gate and pushed it with all their might. The gate swung open, and they dashed out into the dark street. The malevolent figure chased them, its presence more oppressive than ever. They could feel its cold breath on their backs. "To my house!" Clara shouted, pointing to a nearby home. The friends raced toward the house and reached the door. Diego flung it open, and they hurried inside, slamming the door behind them. "Okay, we're safe now," Diego said, panting. But the friends knew they weren't truly safe. The malevolent figure was still after them, and they could feel its presence just outside the door. "What are we going to do?" Julia asked, her voice trembling. Lucas shook his head. "I don't know, but we need to find a way to get rid of it." The friends exchanged glances, their hearts beating in unison. They knew they had to find a way to rid themselves of the malevolent figure, or they would never escape that house. The group gathered in Clara's living room, their faces pale yet resolute. They understood they couldn't run away forever. It was time to confront the evil presence that was hunting them. "We need a plan," Diego said, his voice steady despite the fear evident in his eyes. "We can't just wait for it to go away." Lucas nodded, picking up an old book from the shelf. "Remember that ritual we found? It might be our only chance." Julia shivered but agreed. "We'll need candles, salt, and blood." She whispered the last word. Clara stood up, determined. "I'll get the candles and the salt. Diego, can you draw the protective circle on the floor?" As they prepared, the air grew heavier. The malevolent presence was drawing closer. They could feel it. "Hurry!" Lucas shouted, lighting the last candle. The four friends positioned themselves within the circle, holding hands. Lucas began to chant the ancient words of the ritual, his voice echoing through the room. Suddenly, the windows flew open violently, a chilling wind sweeping into the room. The shadowy figure materialized before them, its eyes glowing with supernatural fury. "Keep going," Clara shouted, gripping her friend's hands tightly. The entity advanced, but was repelled by the salt circle. It howled in rage, its scream piercing the ears of the young friends. Lucas intensified his chanting, his voice growing stronger. The others joined him, their voices merging into a determined chorus. The malevolent figure writhed, trying to resist the power of the ritual, but as the words flowed, it began to dissipate. "It's working!" Julia exclaimed, refusing to let go of her friend's hands. With one final deafening scream, the entity exploded into a cloud of black smoke, vanishing into the air. The silence fell over the room. The friends remained still for a moment, barely daring to believe it was over. Slowly, they released each other's hands. Diego was the first to speak. "We did it. We really did it." Clara let out a nervous laugh of relief. "It's over. We're free." Julia hugged Lucas, tears of relief streaming down her face. "Thank you for not giving up." The four friends embraced, exhausted, yet victorious. They had faced evil and survived. Now they shared a bond that nothing could break. As the sun rose, flooding the room with light through the windows, they knew their lives would never be the same. They had confronted the unimaginable and emerged stronger. The nightmare was over, but the friendship that united them would last forever.